the end of another franchise. I really don't know what to say about this movie. We'll start by the cover of this DVD, okay? And I do want to complain about this. He also wears this like for a second in the movie. I thought they were gonna make it like what he wears when he kills, but gravely they don't, because that would have been stupid. Seeing as the mask was only something that he wore when he was in the asylum, so that he wouldn't try biting at people. So yes. So the origin of this movie, you see, after Red Dragon came out, there was nothing left to do for the Hannibal franchise. So Dino De Laurentiis kept pushing, poking, and prodding the writer Thomas Harris, who wrote the books, to write another book so they could make a movie about it, and even had him write the movie. This movie is very stereotypical of movies that were coming out at the time. See, this movie came out in 2007, around the time of stuff like Batman Begins and Casino Royale, movies that were reboots of well-known franchises, and thus origin stories. This was not a full-fledged reboot, as this is supposed to be canon to the rest of the movies, although that timeline's already messed up with Red Dragon anyway, so who knows. But this is an origin story, and Hannibal Lecter is the protagonist. Yet, you heard me right, protagonist, not antagonist, like he was sort of the anti-hero in Hannibal. Here, he's a full-fledged protagonist. Now, he's not a good guy, no siree, but you are meant to sympathize him through various scenes that you have. And thus, we shall start the review. He started in 1944, in the middle of World War II, and I went, I'm not a war movie guy. Thankfully, I did warm up to the second half at least. All this World War II stuff that starts out with, not for me. But apparently now, despite the fact that Hannibal Lecter has been portrayed by British actors primarily, even in Manhunter, it is established here that he is actually Lithuanian. Yep. And he lives in Lithuania in a castle that he apparently had with his mother, father, and previously unmentioned sister named Misha, which could also be a boy's name. But, yeah. And because of this World War II and the enemy is closing in, they leave. And they run to a cabin. But they are found by some Russian soldiers who just want water. When the enemy, the Nazis, find them and start bombing the place. But a plane falls down and doesn't get destroyed at all. Because of an explosion, it kills Hannibal's mother and father, and leaving him and his sister alone in the cabin until they're found by a group of Lithuanian Nazi supporters. led by Reese Ifan's character in this. I forgot the name. And there's Herr Gorik, played by Richard Brake. It is Richard Brake. I don't know Reese Ifan was in this either. They're great. I'll say the acting in this, not too bad. Richard Brake and Reese Ifan are pretty good. The guy who plays Hannibal in this, though, and I want to say his name. He's an unknown actor and didn't really do much outside of commercials. Gaspard Ulliel. Unfortunately, he passed away this year, but there was some kind of accident he had. But he is fine, but when he tries to copy Anthony Hopkins' snarky scenes, it comes off a little forced to me. There's some lines he can read pretty good, but comes off. So we cut to 8 years later with. Hold on. So these soldiers are on the run from the SS because they killed the SS in charge, and there is no food, so they decide they're going to eat the children. Except for we know that Hannibal's going to survive because. Hello. So of course they eat his sister, which we were not, really fully told until later. But come on, it's obvious that the sister dies. Like, we have to have her be eaten so the plot can be driven that he becomes a cannibal. Yeah. And it's just me, but like, they keep calling him Hannibal, right? And I always thought maybe that was like a nickname. And his real name was something else. Like, they were going to call him something else. Like in Wolverine Origins, where his name is Jimmy, and he calls himself Logan. I thought Hannibal was going to be like a name that he was reborn himself with or something. But that is his name, and it's... wow. Okay, sure. So now we jump 8 years, and Hannibal somehow survived, and we never find out why they didn't eat him, just the sister. I don't understand that. Oh, because if they didn't, then we wouldn't have a movie. But other than that, we don't really get any knowledge as to why they didn't eat him too. Maybe because after her they were full. I don't know. But now it's 8 years later, he's at this orphanage, which conveniently is in his old castle, so that he can take the secret letters that his mother hid on the day they ran away in a secret compartment, take those and run away to his uncle's place in France. How he got across the border is beyond me, but yeah. But goes to France, and he meets. His intention is to meet with his uncle, which in the book, I guess, his uncle is still alive and takes him there. But here, he just makes his way there. And he meets his aunt, played by Gong Li, who is like Vietnamese or Chinese. She's Chinese. And it's really weird. Right? Because right away, there's like this sexual tension between them. Even though he's supposed to be 16 and she's an adult. And there's this tension. They even kiss at one point. And at the end, he tells her he loves her. But, she's disgusted at that point. But anyway, so he's living with her now. And then ends up going to a medical school. Apparently the youngest to ever go to med school. I don't know. But he decides in his free time to sneak around. He has this, he sees these men questioning this guy, and they use this stuff, inject him with it to get information. It helps him remember stuff. So he steals some of that, injects himself so he can remember the people responsible for his sister's death and go after them. And so he ends up going back to the cabin in Lithuania. Again, somehow able to get there. We see him on a train, so I don't know. But he's able to get back there, and they just so happen to leave all of their dog tags right there. And so he finds out their name, and just so happens to come across Herr Gorich, played by Richard Brake, and he decapitates him. Yeah. Oh, by the way, there was the first kill he actually does is on a butcher who slaps it down on the ass and says, "Does your pussy open sideways or something?" Because she's Chinese. I don't know. Or Japanese. She's Japanese. Excuse me. Because they call her Japanese. No. But he decapitates the butcher with his aunt's blade. Which, by the way, I did mention, like, the kiss and stuff. Technically, she's only his aunt by marriage. But it's still kind of weird. Just saying. And then he goes after Herr Gorich. So he wraps him around a tree and wraps a rope around his neck attached to a horse to get information on where the others are. Once he tells him, he then instructs the horse to go forward and it decapitates him. Other than that, wouldn't it, like, choke him out first other than decapitate? But I guess that's how it works. And I can't say for sure. I watched this on Tubi and they have the R-rated version. And that's the unrated version on DVD. I don't know if they show more, but they cut away from the decapitation here, which is in the R-rated version. So I don't know. I could always put it in and check myself. But so yes, this has now become The Crow starring Hannibal Lecter. Sorta. And what it is. Hannibal Lecter's The Crow. Sorta. And so now he's going after these people, and that leads them to Reese Fan's character. But Reese Fan sends another one of them after Lecter, but he embalms him to death. And he, sets up. There's this pretty creepy scene, though, where he and his aunt are sitting at the restaurant that this one guy owns, right? One of the guys there, Gordon, Zolan, or something like that. Mustache guy. The mustache guy, we'll call him. And we see that he comes in with his family. He's got a wife, daughter, son. And the daughter, he entices the daughter with a cherry and then slips the dog tag in her pocket. And when the mustache guy goes to give her change for church, he sees that. But we can't have sympathy for any of these guys, even though this made me have something like, oh, he's got a family. You can't. No, he's a human trafficker, so he's a bad man, and we can't have sympathy for him. Nope, he's got a family, and you don't want his family to die, but just because he's a human trafficker, let him die. Right? He does end up dying, but so yeah, that's when the guy comes after him. He bombs him to death, and then there's this inspector, Polyp, played by Dominic West, who is, out of all the police characters he goes against, did probably the least effective. He's in a couple scenes here and there, and it shows up at the end. There's no real. At one point, he does take him in after the death of the butcher, thinking it's him, but then the butcher's head shows up while they have him in custody. So, it can't be him. Yeah. So, it comes down to Reese Fan's kidnaps the aunt, and so he has to figure out where she is, but she shakes a cage, and so she hears the bullets. which are the birds where the mustache man works. And so he goes to that place, and he basically threatens him, tell me where they are, And at this point, he's shortly transforming into Hannibal Lecter. At this point, he kills him, and then, he's like, I will let you go for the sake of your kids. I will spare your life for the sake of your children, your family. But right when the guy goes to grab the gun, so if he didn't go for the gun, would he have let him live? I don't think so. He's a witness. I don't think so. Yeah, that's his aunt live though, so which is really weird. You wouldn't think he would, but so he finally is able to track down Racer Fonz, who is on a boat. Before he can dispose of him, a guard comes in, and but he's able to dispose of him, and they have a final showdown. Maybe that's earlier in the film actually, but they have a final showdown, and he basically he cuts an M on his chest for Misha, and then eats his cheek, killing him. And his aunt's so disgusted she leaves, and then the whole boat explodes, and they're supposed to think Hannibal's dead, but we know he's not dead. We see him walking. Then he goes to Canada so he can get the last of the people who hurt him. Again, you have to question how he got across the border, even though he's supposed to be dead. And in this final moment, like when he's fighting against Reese Fonz, he's wearing a turtleneck, his hair slicked back, he looks kind of like Hannibal Lecter, supposed to be. But I don't know, this movie's just... I've always said this, prequels are unnecessary, especially this one it's so forced, because Thomas Harris did not want to do this, and basically Dino De Laurentiis said, if you don't do it, I'll find someone else who will. So anyway, there was going to be someone doing this movie, and yeah, it's a revenge flick, which I usually like, but you're supposed to root for a guy is a cannibalistic murderer. And even when he wins, like, oh yeah, he won, but we already knew that because it's a prequel, so I would have preferred a sequel to Hannibal, but Anthony Hopkins was done, so there's that. I would have when Red Dragon was going on, I would have told Anthony Hopkins, hey, I'll tell you what, we'll make a deal. You do a 2-picture deal. You do this and a sequel to Hannibal, and we finish it off, be done. And what I would have done is something to tie it all together with the sequel to Hannibal, bringing back Clarice Starling, bringing back Will... I always forget his... Graham, and finishing off this series and doing something, But this was just... It's not worth your time. I'll say that right now. It's not worth your time. So, yeah. So what are your thoughts on Hannibal Rising? When it comes, let me share, like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching. I've been Scotty. I'll see you in the next one.